Welcome to Critical Mess, a podcast where three friends discuss movies that critics and audiences just don't agree on. I am Nick Honeywell, along with my two trusty co-hosts here, Mr. Griswold, he's otherwise known as Andrew, and Brian McCullough. Say hello, gentlemen.
Hey, my second favorite movie is Manchester by the Sea.
Chris, what do you have to say to the people?
That just threw me way
You
off.
didn't have anything prepared, did you?
Nothing prepared for that.
Adam,
What's your second favorite movie?
Second favorite movie?
you don't get asked that all the time?
Yeah.
It's definitely not Bad Boys 2.
Ooh, too soon.
Spoiler alert.
You see?
Anyways, welcome to all you cinephiles. This here is episode 2 of Critical Mess. And if you guys thought the first one was bad, boy, are you in for a treat here. I'm just kidding, of course, guys. This episode is going to be way better. We have better mics. We have more experience. I'm going to stop saying every other word. I'm working on that.
That was pretty good.
Thank you. I hope you guys caught that.
Perfect.
I promise I'm working on it. Anyways, guys, so a brief caveat here. There will be tons of spoilers in this and every episode. So you have been warned with the spoiler alerts. Many of the movies we talk about came out 20 or 30 years ago. So, don't feel too bad about it. But we might talk about some new stuff one of these days. Today, however, we are talking about a markedly divisive film among critics and audiences. Talking about Bad Boys, not 1, but 2. A film from 2003 directed by Michael Bay, starring Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, and Jordi Mola. Also starring I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I should have done my research on that. I'm gonna assume it's Jordi Mola. I don't know where you hear the pronunciation for that.
Oh, yeah, Jordy. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah. Molla. Sorry, Jordi. My deepest apologies. 1,000 pardons. Gabrielle Union also in this film, and Joe Pantoliano. It's a buddy cop film. Sequel to, of course, the 1995 classic film of the same name, minus the number 2. According to our trusty barometer, Rotten Tomatoes, which is what we look at to kind of evaluate the critic and audience response to these films, at the start of 2023, Bad Boys 2 holds a 23% rating among critics, making it pretty rotten, and a 78% score with audiences, which is pretty fresh. So a nice disparity. Yeah, right. We got a healthy disparity here. So we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about why this is a film that audiences and critics simply can't agree on. So let's get into
55 point. What was Hook? Hook was,
and I don't think it was quite that much,
but not 55.
Yeah, that's a big.
How big the differences are, and kind of
This is the biggest so far out of 2.
That's a bit. Yeah, it's a sample size. It's something.
It is.
All right, so guys, I just want to start here with let's talk overall impressions of the movie. I know it's a film I assume we have all seen before, right? We've all seen Bad Boys 2 before, right?
Yeah, I've seen it. I saw it once. I saw Bad Boys and Bad Boys 2 for the first time maybe a couple years ago.
Yeah.
The first time.
Pretty recently. Yeah, so
I did not seek those movies out.
Okay.
Watched them just because. Well, you recommended Bad Boys to me, maybe both of them, or I just knew that you, Nick, loved them, and I also know that they're just in the zeitgeist. So I want to.
I like this type of like hyper masculine type bullshit kind of, and I'll fully admit to that. Yeah, those kind of Bruckheimer, the Don Simpson Bruckheimer production. It's always a good sign to me.
Mm-hmm.
But, Chris,
well, you are a big Steven Seagal fan too.
Oh, I'm a big Steven Seagal, and we're probably
volume.
And we'll probably do a whole series on that someday, ladies and gentlemen. But that day is not today. Grizz, when was your first exposure to this film?
Coming out in 2003, that had to be high school. So I definitely saw this in high school. So that was 16. So how many years ago was that?
Saw it in the theater.
Saw it in theaters, and I probably saw it maybe once between then and now. So it's been a number of years, at least a decade, since I'd actually seen it recently. So
okay, so we're going in. So you pretty recent.
Very fresh.
Just you're not going to be have the nostalgia glasses.
Yeah, I'm coming in blank slate. First time seeing it 2 years ago.
I think that's very good. I think that's how, because I think a lot of people saw this movie. It did very well.
Sure.
In the box office. And Grizz, you've got a little bit more of that long term. Maybe you do have a little nostalgia for it. I have a lot of nostalgia for it. So I think we've got a good contrast here.
Very much so.
Wasn't Tia Leone in the first one?
Oh, she was.
I have nostalgia for her.
Well,
where'd she go?
it's just she married Duchovny, right?
Okay.
And then she just kind of went into the abyss.
She was in like 3 big movies, and then that was it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's Bad Boys 1. Sorry, not Bad Boys 2.
All right, guys. So I want to talk about, just overall impressions of the film out of the gate. What struck you about this movie?
Chris, what you got?
Oh man. Okay. So this movie, I remember it being that nostalgic feeling of just big action, explosions, buddy cop movie from what, a late 90s, early 2000s. And I just don't remember it being this hokey when I saw it in theaters. I mean, it was fun. I was a teenager at the time. So, but it was just, I don't know, I was talking to Nick about this right before we got started, but it's just hilarious how insane some of the scenes were, the lines, just the overall action was just so over the top. And
you're talking about the props too, like just how.
Yeah.
Just
so I wrote this down, but I think the props department had equal budget to the pyrotechnics and explosion budget. It was just seeing all the greater details, everything. The 2 rats having sex.
I got respect for that. Yeah, I love that little.
That was quite a
little practical effect.
Crazy little vignettes in this movie, which is what I think makes it great. But anyway, sorry.
Somebody had to build that and then film it and do all the scenes with it, and Lawrence had to react to it. So
there's a lot of great comedy in this movie. I don't think anyone will dispute that, and I think that's going to play a lot into why this movie was rated the way it was. So all right, guys. So right out of the gate here, I want to talk about. I know we all just watched this movie, and the first thing that struck me, quite literally, it's that Bruckheimer Simpson graphic at the start of the movie with the thunderclap, and it's so lit. It's just it just felt literally, it's quite lit, and it's just I just really that just hyped me for any movie, and pretty much any film that has that little start to it, it's got my attention. So just a small observation there that I enjoyed. It was once again nostalgic.
Before we go any further, I haven't really given my initial thoughts on it. But before I do that, I actually stumbled across a synopsis on this film.
Yeah, please.
That kind of speaks to what I thought of it. Let me just read it here. It says, Will Smith stars as Mike Lowry, a Will Smith type police detective who doesn't play by the rules and somehow drives a Ferrari in this ecstasy-infused crime action thriller. Joining him is Martin Lawrence as Marcus Burnett, an incompetent and skittish detective with an emotional overdependence on his sister. Join the undynamic duo as they terrorize, destroy, and racketeer Miami, get yelled at by their mean old boss for their cavalier methods, and then get ordered to go out and do it all again with double the gusto and no repercussions. Because remember, they're bad boys. Joe Pantoliano shines as Captain Howard, who reportedly was directed not to use any of his acting talents. Action fans rejoice. There's just so much action. Listen to this example of the action. In Act 1, the boys pursue a truck on a bridge while bad guys throw cargo at them. In Act 2, the boys pursue a truck on a city street while bad guys throw cargo at them. And in Act 3, subverting all heretofore car chase expectations, the boys escape in a truck through a living room while bad guys shoot at them. It's a fresh take on the Bad Boys 2 car chase trope, and boy does it deliver. Not to worry, non-action fans. If you've been duped into watching Bad Boys 2 by an 18 to 24-year-old male, go ahead and take a 140-minute long nap. The decibel level won't deviate by more than 2 points from 110, allowing the film to conveniently double as a white noise machine. And you will rest assured knowing that it follows an engineered formula. Every 7.4 seconds on screen will be a car go vroom, bomb go boom, or titty go boom, which is clinically proven to keep the viewer's interest level at 100%, allowing your slumber to go completely unnoticed. Get ready for a thrill ride of a movie. That's right, guys. The synopsis is still going. I don't know who wrote this. Where from opening scene to closing credits, the stakes will remain exactly the same. The character arcs will continue to be horizontal lines, and the setups and payoffs will conveniently stay out of the way to allow for maximum explosions, guns, cars, TNA, bullets, drugs, explosion, car chase, drugs, explosion, punch, shoot, gun, machine gun. A sensory feast for the hearing, seeing, and mentally impaired. This wonderfully delightful and originally written film boasts a screenplay generated by a ChatGPT response to write a movie about Grand Theft Auto Vice City in the style of Michael Bay, but he forgot to take his Adderall. You've never experienced a film that so delicately walks the line between, was that racist? And, yep, totally racist. Also starring the great Michael Shannon, who reportedly was also directed not to use any of his acting talents, Bad Boys 2 is the summer blockbuster you can pretend to like if you've ever been accused of being pretentious. So, I read that, and then I watched no, I'm just kidding. I wrote that. And then I read it. But yeah, so that's kind of that might sum up a little bit my initial reactions to the movie. I've got a lot more we can unpack. Obviously, that was completely overblown sarcasm, and
I'd like to give a point for point rebuttal.
I hope I triggered you. That was exactly why I wrote that. I can't wait to hear it.
No,
Let's keep going.
Yeah. Okay. To begin, the genesis of Will Smith's Ferrari is well explained in Bad Boys 1. I'm just kidding. We're not going to do this.
And it's funny because I actually wrote that down. I had a point thinking, that's so ludicrous that I bet it was explained in the first one, and I forgot how we had that. So that is justified. Okay, I retract.
I only wanted to score 1 point. That's all I needed. That's all I needed. And in fact, I did not disagree with many of the things that were in that synopsis. I don't know. I get the feeling here that I'm probably going to be the most polarized, liking this movie the most. But I don't know, Grizz. I mean, you need to. I mean, fill me in if you're. I mean, this is just a classic to me.
I have to fall probably directly in the middle of each of you in the absolute ridiculousness of this movie, but at the same time, it was outrageously enjoyable. Mainly not because it was a cool action flick, just because it was so stupidly funny, from the action, the lighting, like you said, the car chase to the bridge, the car chase to the van chase to the street, the whatever to the building, to the other building. It's just one action set piece to the next. And it was, I don't know, it's just so strange, but it was so much fun to watch. I don't know. It's been so many years since I've seen it.
Well, perhaps you can, moderate us a little bit here as kind of the voice of reason, as we battle this one out. I know that, well, here's one thing I will concede right out of the gate, and I'm not just going to be a total Bad Boys 2 fanboy here. I'm going to first say that I think the first movie is way better. I think I
enjoyed the first movie.
Yeah, it's a much better film. There's a reason that movie put Michael Bay on the map, and it's and it holds up really well to this day. Bad Boys 2 feels very much of its time. It doesn't feel timeless to me in a way that Bad Boys 1 does. So I will first of all admit that. But I do want to do a little ribbing to this movie out of the gate. And one of the things that disappointed me about this movie, just looking at it very critically, and a reason I'm sure critics didn't like this movie, because this is one of the biggest no-nos in screenwriting, and that is, the idea of telling and not showing, right? And there's a lot of telling and not showing, especially at the start of the movie, when it just could have been set up. It's almost, you're treating the audience like they're stupid. They can't figure out that drugs are being dropped off, and there's a couple of lines, the cargo is being dropped. It's literally a line in the film, right? There's $150 million worth of my dope on the way, right? That's literally in the film. Did we need to we could have shown these things?
Another example of that, there's a specific part of the movie that really hit me. It was with about 25 minutes left in the movie. So Marcus, who is played by Martin Lawrence, Marcus exclaims, so there's just the next, maybe beyond when we started Act 3, but it's they're getting ready to go do the last set piece, and Marcus just says, "Shit just got real." It's it took me out of it, because he shouldn't have had to tell me that shit just got real, because I should have just known that, and it was very much directed at the audience to let us know that, ooh, shit just got real. It hasn't been real yet, and it just got real, and that I feel is an example of just telling and not showing.
Yeah, I think one of the heaviest things in this film, as I noticed over and over and over again, there were so many setup scenes that were not for the film. They were just for the audience to solve the next thing that was coming. I think one of them was they went and they busted up that what did they busted up the
guy's shop.
Yeah, the guy's shop, and that was simply to get that was their intel guy to get them to the morgue. Is that correct?
I think they were the blonde-haired Haitian guy. He was giving them the intel where he lived.
And then they went to the apartment and had that cool shootout that I had. One of my notes was
oh, that's right. Okay.
Really well done.
So, but there was no reason for them to set that up. There was that, and so that set up this part. So they didn't need necessarily that.
His name is Ice Cake.
The movie was over 2.5 hours long. There's absolutely no reason for a lot of these scenes. And then the other scene was just like this, but it was the where'd they run into to get the rat costumes or the extermination costumes? Didn't they have to go into a building and get the costumes, and they shot.
There's a couple of quick cuts where there's a guy. He's like, "So you want to kill some roaches?"
Yeah, and they're
They're
going
like,
through this
yeah.
whole scene. I was like, you did not need to explain that. Just show me in the house. They have the rat costumes, the rat truck. We don't need to know that they're undercover. We don't need to know that they went through this whole process of like joking and bantering back and forth, just to show that they were going to use this as their excuse to get into this this gangster's house.
Well, there's a lot of fat that can be trimmed from this movie. I'm gonna totally concede that. I mean, it's what, it's
Absolutely.
2.5 hours, right? About 2.5.
Yeah, it was
I
like
believe the runtime.
yeah,
There, give or
2:20.
take.
My synopsis, so whatever that is, 220-ish or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's if you're gonna run that long, you better have plenty to say.
Is this a comedy or an action?
I wrote action comedy.
I mean, it's an action, but if you had to put it in order,
A lot of the critics said it was straight up comedy.
Oh, really? I would say it's in order of probably.
Not that it didn't have action in it, but that it is a comedy movie. And I hate to be too pedantic with the genres because I feel like that locks things down. I didn't feel like it was a straight ahead comedy, but a lot of the critics did, or at least that's what they said. What would you guys
say this one, like the first film, felt like an action comedy. This one feels like a comedy action. Complete opposite flip. It felt way more hokey. The lines, like the one hitters, just over and over again with the captain or Lawrence after he's all high on ecstasy or whatever it is. It definitely felt like more comedy. This one felt more polished too. The first one felt super grainy. It felt more grounded. And then you have the second one that you could tell the shots they had a higher budget. They could use better lighting or whatever. Not, I say better lighting, but it was just far more intense lighting that they could use to make it look more dramatic or feel more dramatic when they were still joking around.
Can I ask? I want to ask you both another question too, and I think that this might help frame some of our conversation. So, I guess I don't think we got into this yet in the podcast, but I wish Rotten Tomatoes had the ability for me to give every movie 2 ratings. I wish it had the ability for me to give my enjoyability factor and my critical review. And I think that right there is 50% of the disparity between critics and audience. Reading through, and we'll read through some of these reviews as we go, but a lot of the audience rated it 5 out of 5 classic because it was so enjoyable. And a lot of the critics rated it low because it broke a lot of the rules of filmmaking, yada, yada, yada. It wasn't critically well-made movie. I would have rated this a higher, well, actually, I might take that back. I don't know if I would even rate this very high on enjoyability, but it definitely wouldn't be the same as my critical score on it. And that's a larger question too when it comes to movies. How much of your rating is fueled by your enjoyment while that 2 hours that you were watching that movie, and how much of your rating is fueled by a more cerebral analysis of the movie? And everyone has somewhere on that scale. No one is right or wrong. I tend to be more critical on my ratings, but I'm curious. Have you thought about that? Or
for me, it totally depends on my expectations of the movie, what kind of movie it's going to be.
Or like what it's trying to do.
Yeah, if it's if it's a Steven Seagal movie, I'm not going to watch that with a critical eye. Well, maybe I am going to, just for the hilarity of it. But I think if it's something like, if it's like an Aronofsky movie, I'm probably not going to like really enjoy it that much. It's going to be probably hard to watch, kind of a slog in parts, but brilliant, and so those kind of movies. So I don't know, those kinds of movies I would score really high just for different reasons. So I get, it's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, I'd have to say that's such a hard question. I think expectation is the number one thing, like Nick said, because I go in, I usually have already watched a trailer for the movie, at least, if not, or at most a trailer for a movie, if at least a teaser maybe. But you have to go in with some type of expectation, knowing that it's a comedy or it's supposed to be kind of crazy or wild over the top. I think I would go into this as like a movie experience, go to the theater with a few buddies, laugh about it, and that's about it. I don't know if I'd go into it thinking this is some directorial expertise in how he shot the film or anything like that. I don't think any Michael Bay movie's been like that. But
did you guys rate it out of 5? Or I know, Nick, you do like out of 4 scale. Like, what? Give me your rating out of 5 or 4, 10 or whatever you want to do. Give me your rating on this.
It's not going to be great. I mean, mine's on a scale of 10 with halves. So I'd probably sit this right at 5.5, maybe 6, and that's being kind of generous. I was not expecting it to be as much of a goofball Like it just like every time they had a weird liner, like a one-liner, it just straight threw me out of the movie. But the action scenes, you're like, oh, that's pretty fucking that's amazing. Like some of this stuff was pretty cool. Like they're rotating the camera on a jig around the room when he's on the other side of that wall inside the drug house or whatever, and he's got like the Haitian guys or with the huge dreadlocks, and they're shooting back and forth at each other, and the camera rotates while he's only looking at the one wall and then the other wall. And it's like
It was really well done the first 2 revolutions, but then the next 15,
and it just kept going. That's just Michael Bay. He just does it.
we didn't have Neo dodging bullets 98 times. They set all those cameras up and he did it once. So, you can have a cool thing without any, but I do agree that was a cool scene. Nick, do you
Did you give an answer number?
5.5 to 6?
Yeah, I'd say 5.5
out of 10.
Yeah.
So 2.5 out of 5 ish.
Yeah, this movie, it just has so much nuance for me. I feel like I have to go on a 100-point scale.
Nuance. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to give it an 83 out of 100.
83. So specific.
Yeah, that just feels right to me. Really enjoy this movie. And this is one I'm definitely ranking on that enjoyability factor a lot more than the critical factor. Yeah. There are a lot of really, there were some things in this movie that were just cringy, let's just say. Especially, however many years later, almost, close to 2 decades later, right?
It doesn't hold up well.
No, I think in a lot of ways.
There's some sexism, like all kinds of stuff in it. And it's very much an element of its time.
Yes. And at the time, that stuff wouldn't have really stood out, I don't think, in a way that it does now. So it's tough to judge a movie, 20 years later in that way, just because how could it, know what the future held.
I didn't give my rating based on that stuff either. It's just a kind of a note,
Yeah.
It just makes it harder to watch now. But I'm not going to split hairs and get into every single show that I just was inexplicably terrible about this movie to me. I have some big overarching themes, but yeah, just for sake of completion, I give it a 1 out of 5 on Rotten Tomatoes. I rarely give a movie that low of a score. So 20% out of 100, I guess. And I can back that up.
I think I can back that up.
Some pretty strong reasons. My enjoyability. I'll just quickly say some of the things I liked about it. Martin Lawrence is funny. I'm sorry, he's funny. I'm not a big Will Smith fan, but I do like Martin Short. The rotating gut shootout scene was cool. Well done. The scene where old boy is trying to ask out his niece or whatever, and they come and they're like threatening him, and Will Smith's being all gangster to him.
He's got the bottle of vodka. He's taking swigs out of it.
Man, if we could have just had more of that in this movie, oh man, I could have taken all the rest of the stuff and swallowed it a little bit easier. And then this is probably an unpopular one, but that mortuary body gross out sequence, I thought it was funny. I kind of liked it. It's a little gross out. You had the ecstasy pills inexplicably drop into a glass that Martin Lawrence would go and actually drink out of a random glass in a room full of dead bodies. Like, that's weird.
He made that quick cut. I was wondering the same thing, but that shot was cool where he flipped the bag and the 2 pills flew in the air. It just happened to click in the glass or whatever. I can't tell if that was CG or if it was what, but
while the shot may have been executed well, and I agree that it was,
but there was a cutscene that said he was looking for his antacid. And he said something like he was looking for him. I could have swore he put him in a glass.
No, he was throwing up, and he just needed to. He was just thirsty.
I could have sworn he said he mentioned something about it.
Again, that comes down to one of my big buckets of problems with the categories. The problem with this movie is it's lazy writing, very lazy writing. I feel like that was a scene where they're like, hey, it'd be funny to get Martin Lawrence on ecstasy. How we're going to do it? And they did it like the laziest way you possibly could, with like some kind of coincidental random thing that is like perfectly timed, and now he's high. So yeah, I don't know.
How much of a Michael Bay movie do you think that is, though? Like, how much do you think is just him excruciatingly going through every detail of an explosion and an action scene, and then being like, you guys are going to go in the morgue and you're going to dig through the body for the ecstasy. You're going to accidentally take ecstasy. Go. Like, do you think he's just like, that's his scene for that, but he will go through with a fine-tooth comb and how to write an action scene?
Well, I don't think he wrote the screenplay. I think he just directed a screenplay, and just didn't put a lot of thought into a lot of the things or why people would do things. I don't know who did write the screenplay. I don't think Michael Bay is a meticulous director like a Christopher Nolan or a James Cameron. I think he's a bombastic director who,
Yeah.
wants to shock and thrill and just turn everything up as loud as possible. He's made some really good movies. I'm not going to just hate on Michael Bay, but he doesn't strike me as a meticulous perfectionist. He strikes me as a let's show TNA and Ferraris and explosions, which that, I don't mind any of those things.
That's true.
So this movie was written by Ron Shelton and Jerry Stahl. So Ron Shelton actually wrote Bull Durham. So
Okay.
he's got a little bit of a pedigree.
That's a beef.
Yeah, and I think to the point about the ecstasy thing, yes, sure they backed into that idea because they didn't have a good way to get into it. But damn it, how fucking funny was that?
Yeah, no, it was fun.
They couldn't not do it because it was just such a brilliant scene.
And that's why it was on my list of 3 good things I liked about the movie.
Yeah, absolutely hilarious. I mean, I think Martin Lawrence in a lot of ways is kind of forgotten and is underappreciated. People don't really. He was fucking funny. His stand up back in the day, he used to be a killer.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was.
And I think he's really funny.
Yeah, his show on Fox was funny. I mean, he was funny.
He's like been the one reason, besides the fact that we're doing this podcast, that I didn't turn the movie off.
Yeah.
So
and I don't really, maybe just kind of stepped away from filmmaking. I don't really know his personal history. I know, didn't he have like some major freak out like middle of LA one thing? He did. And I do not remember the details, so I'm not going to speculate. But there was an incident, and that's all I was surprised. Okay, well let's talk a little bit about the one thing you brought up there, Brian, was kind of there was kind of like a lot of uncomfortable racism in this movie in a lot of ways, and I think some intended and maybe some not so intended. Let's talk about the really intended part, the kind of the KKK white power opening scene is really an intense scene and way to open a film in many ways. And I think it's just a really interesting scene, in my opinion, for a lot of reasons. I think not the least of which is it's really just an awesome start to the kind of the banter and the chemistry between Lawrence and Will Smith and in the kind of in a super high stakes situation, where they're just, and it's kind of when they're at their best, when and it starts in, I will love kind of how it's kind of an homage to the first film, where they kind of, I don't know if you guys remember the first movie, but where it starts with another really precarious situation where Will Smith is getting carjacked and they kind of get in this like play fight with each other and,
they distract the guy and then
Wesley Snipes, passenger 57,
right.
It's a great opening sequence. And this is kind of a similar type of deal. It's like these two guys are just kind of talking shit to each other and in the midst of this incredibly deadly, crazy situation. It's just I just think it's a super fun scene that's just crazy and interesting.
I think it could have been if I wasn't taken out of the immersion. And what took me out of the immersion was just everything around that scene. You've got all these like teams of guys within eyesight and earsight.
It was a little ridiculous.
Well, now the radios break, so there's lazy writing, so they don't know what's going on. And then you've got all these KKK guys who are clearly crazy to take this cop and put a gun to his head, yada yada, all the things they end up doing. And then you've got Will Smith standing there with 2 guns. Which, first of all, if you're holding 2 guns out at arm's length, like what would you call this? Like
akimbo?
Yeah. Okay. You're only looking at one of the guns. Somebody's going to come take the other gun out of your damn hand. Yeah, it's absurd. And the fact that he's doing that in the middle of a bunch of guys, and they literally sit there and talk for 5 minutes, and the guy who's got the gun to Martin Lawrence's head, he's not asking for anything. He's not doing or saying anything. He's literally just standing there listening. That wouldn't happen. He would be like, do this or I'll do this. You know what I mean? Like it was like just the Will Smith show. So I'm saying that because like, I agree with you. I think that these are the kind of situations that it's classic Bad Boys. And you have these 2 guys bantering in high stakes. But I think that an example of a movie where that's done well is Rush Hour. Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan get in those type of situations and have all kind of banter, and it's done really well. And I really think it's just because the writing's not as lazy. And in this scene, I'm just so taken out of it because I'm like, why is no one doing anything at all? So I don't know. I just had to make that. And again, I'm going to tell myself now, I'm not going to split any more hairs with details like that. Let's just assume that it's a silly, goofy movie and there's a million, this is cinema sins, right? So, but I did, maybe that's speaking to a larger point as to why I wasn't able to get on board with more of it like you were, because maybe my threshold for like just, in this movie in particular, my threshold for immersion was just maybe it's the nostalgia, because I watch movies that I'm nostalgic for now, and I look past a host of problems that if I watched it new now, I probably wouldn't. So maybe it's that, or maybe it's just we're different people, and I just can't get past scenes like that. I mean, the whole time I'm questioning the scene. So
Yeah, I totally hear you on that. I don't even necessarily disagree with you. It's
Right.
just it's just kind of your mindset, as
You
it
enjoy
relates
it.
to the film. It's a ludicrous scene, a ridiculous scene, and a crazy situation. And I thought it was just a crazy and interesting setup for the film. But I could definitely see why it would be taken that way, 100%. And I think that kind of leads into another point here, and that I think is worth making about this movie, and that is and that scene really illustrates it. I mean, this is a movie that was very clearly made for the big screen. Just 100% a big screen experience. Just the cinematography and the slow mo where Martin Lawrence takes the bullet in the ass, right? And it's like the bullets fly, and it still looks pretty good today. I mean, it doesn't look like amazing, but for 20 years old CGI, it looks decent. And I can just kind of still hear that just the spectacle of that in the theater and the surround sound, and it was a movie that is where it's meant to be experienced. So I think you lose something with this movie when you aren't watching it on a ridiculous home theater setup or something, which you were, Brian. So that's not an excuse. So
You clearly saw Will Smith dive with one hand, two guns,
Two guns. Yep.
dives, and shoots the bullet, and it goes through 3 different glass vessels and hits a human, and literally does not redirect whatsoever, and does a kill shot in the neck to the guy. Yeah, I saw that very clearly, and I heard it very loudly, and I thought to
I
myself,
definitely had
what?
mine up much louder in this viewing just because I wanted to listen. I wanted to watch this Michael Bay movie and just have the explosions and all the action. But I was still like, I think that's my biggest thing is like I go to the theater. Like growing up, my nostalgia is like going and having an experience, like viewing this, being taken out of whatever I was doing, like school, whatever, and watching a film. And then I feel like the older I get, the more like into it I am when those things, like when something happens and it clicks me away from the scene or it clicks me away from the movie. I'm like, oh, I'm in a theater, or like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And then I started thinking about, oh, did they write that, or why did they do that scene? And it just takes me straight out of it.
To your point, Nick, and I want to read some of these audience reviews. I just kind of read a bunch of the most recent ones, and I think you're really onto why this movie did well, both box office and with audiences. Just some of the Michael gives it 5 stars. Just a dumb, fun, explodey action movie. 3.5 stars by Mark A. Enjoyable buddy movie. 3.5 stars by Gage A. Not that exciting enough, but is worth watching sometimes. For me, it looks better than the first one. So his rating is based on how it looks and the style of it, which it definitely had style for sure. Kin C gives it 5 stars. Nice buddy cop movie that has aged well. He's wrong.
Yeah.
But just a lot of these funniest and most original of action movie trilogy, completely unrealistic, but that's not what we're here for. One of the best action movies ever made. Freeway Chase is definitely number 1 of all time. So these people are appreciating the spectacle, which is what you're getting at.
Sure.
And there's something to be said about that. I just went and watched Avatar too, and if the spectacle wasn't turned to 100, I probably wouldn't have liked it as much as I did. And I think I liked a lot of it just because of the spectacle.
Yeah, if it was in an animated film or something,
Yeah.
versus a fully CG realistic one.
Yeah, I'm not going to be completely unbiased, as much as I like to think.
Oh, I want to just get into. I didn't want to forget to bring this point up because I think it's another reason why this movie just did so well at the box office and with audiences, and once again, maybe critics just aren't as concerned about this, and that is that to me, this is what like the sequel like should have been. This is like what it was expected to be. It was bigger, it was more bombastic, as you said, Brian, and it was not treading really a lot of new ground, but it really did its job. It did. The chemistry was all there with the 2 leads that really made the first one. It brought back some of the characters from the first one that really were hitting right. They amped up the action. They amped up it was just everything cranked to 11. So I think that, and I'm not saying even that's in a lot of ways that's a bad thing, right? Because they're not really trying anything new. They're not not really taking a lot of chances. But they're doing what the audience came to see, right?
Can we talk about what a sequel is for a second?
Sure.
And I think that, to this movie's credit, it is a sequel. And unfortunately, sequels have the constraint of huge expectations from an audience, or not huge expectations, but very specific expectations from the audience. A movie that's not a sequel, the only expectations are either word of mouth or trailer marketing, right? You go in, you see the movie can completely subvert your expectations, and maybe that's a good thing because then you're pleasantly surprised, right? But when you see a sequel, unfortunately, you're locked into this movie is a sequel to another movie. It's got an audience base, and it kind of, Bad Boys 2 couldn't just do whatever it wanted to do. It just had to turn up the bombast, and it did that. And I think that's a larger discussion, and maybe we can have an episode on sequels. But I have a problem with sequels.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, like you said, Nick even said this earlier, it's a victim of its time. Like I think the early 2000s, late 90s, those movies, a lot of those sequels were just outrageously explosive, and they had to be bigger. Their budgets were bigger. The expectations were obviously larger because I think it was almost 10 years between this and the first one. And then it was another almost 20 years between the second and the third that just came out like a year or two ago. Yeah, massive gaps. So there's obviously huge fan bases that have kind of slowly built up. And I think that comes with the territory of any of these. But like of the times, though, you have to go 10x bigger. You have to go bigger on the cameras, the special effects, the prop, like all that stuff.
The Matrix had just recently completely reshaped the entire cinematic landscape.
It just finished that year. The third and final of that trilogy finished in 2003, right? Yeah.
So Bad Boys wasn't the only movie to take cues from it. Every movie was taking cues from Matrix as far as slow-mo, bullet time, carway chase, freeway chase scenes, things like that. So
yeah, they used the same.
And that's not a knock on the movie.
Same Cadillac CTS in BS.
Which, by the way, the car chase scene in Matrix 2 was, in my opinion, much better than the Bad Boys 2. Bad Boys 2 was great. There was a lot of cool practical stuff, but if you're going to do a freeway chase,
that was hands down.
Let's have two semi-trucks run directly nose to nose into each other and flying Neo come save somebody out of the wreckage. That's the way to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was kind of the Matrix chase light.
Yeah,
I would say.
Which is okay.
Let's talk a little bit about, I'm going to talk some cinematography because it's really interesting in this movie, and once again, very of the time it feels like, but also very cool in a lot of ways. Like, for example, toward the beginning of the film, there's this kind of really interesting tracking shot that kind of goes through the club. The Russian mobster played by Peter Stormare,
very
great character.
Yeah, and he did a lot of Michael Bay movies as well.
Yeah, he is. He is a pro. He is the perfect Russian mob boss bad guy. But some of those shots, even the kind of the film opens with the credits open with this kind of crazy tracking.
I mean, it's weaving in and out of legs. So I was curious how that was even shot in the first place. Because are there just actors jumping up out of the way or flipping over the camera to like get it? That was wild. I ought to say some of the cinematography in this film was kind of mind-boggling. They call me like looking at it, and then Michael Bay fashion, he just kind of goes 10 times longer than he needs to. So
there's a lot of digital magic in this movie. A lot of just really cool stuff. I love too how in that club scene, they had that glass floor. You could like see down from the mobster office upstairs. He was counting the money, looking down at everybody dancing, taking their ecstasy. That was kind of fun.
Speaking of cinematography, did you notice that the camera literally never stops moving in this movie? I don't think there's ever
there's never a sit. No, you're totally
always
right.
dolly, Steadicam, or
it's just it's a music video, and it's the cuts. There's cuts every 3 a second.
I've never noticed that.
So many cuts.
I mean, I know that's his style of movie, and he does a lot of handheld. He does a lot of motion.
With the camera rotating around two guys as they're just having pedestrian dialogue. But
what if it's at 60 miles an hour?
Single time. I mean, it's like when you highlight everything, nothing's highlighted.
It's just it's very kinetic. The whole movie is just movement. I think that's a good observation. One thing I wanted to bring up, Brian, it's funny I wrote this down because you kind of wrote on the opposite thing, but I had a problem with was, you were talking about, why does, Will Smith drive the Ferrari and whatnot. I want to know, why is Marcus rich now? He's got this badass house, like he lives on the ocean, he lives on the $900 pool. Yeah, and he's only afford this trash pool, but he's got this beautiful, Miami, like, I mean, I don't know if I put a mansion, but it was a pretty badass house. These guys are young cops. Why do they have Ferraris and big houses? Well, Mike Lowry has Ferraris and big houses because he's trust fund paid.
Yeah. So there's always a first cut scene in it was the first movie. I think they mentioned it here.
Yeah, they talk about it briefly in the first film.
But then he also talked about how he gifts Lawrence, Marcus, things. There's a small cutaway line that he gifts him the pool at the end. That he gave him that pool, so it was a nicer pool, I guess, but he still busted it up.
You're right. He lived right on the water. He had a real nice.
I didn't notice how nice the house was, though. I didn't really pay attention.
No, it was big and nice.
It was on the water, like right there.
It was like a more than $1 million.
Okay.
That house was probably a couple. I mean, I don't know what real estate price. That was a nice house.
Well, I mean, think about the cutscene back. I mean, what is this? That early 2000s, like police guys. Like he's in that scene where he's pulling the cash and he's like showing the giant stacks of cash with his hands inside the mortuary or in the morgue or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about, I'm just gonna be over here counting this. Like there was that quick scene where he's like, maybe in his pocket, maybe shit ton of cash, and we don't know.
Who knows? But see, also, I mean, the police station. My God, it was like it looked like it was like an IKEA store in there. It was like what? There's no police station that looks like that with the like big plate glass, everywhere and. In movies, the Maya was wearing like fucking flip flops and Hawaiian shirts and shit.
And it's the classic Last Action Hero joke. Have you seen that movie in recent years? But it's like he makes that joke where he's like, "What kind of a police station is it?" It looks like there's cartoon characters walking around, but it's like this huge, glorious looking museum style place. But
it's a movie police station, which I'm sure we could do a whole episode on that.
Speaking of the two guys and the police station and things like that, movies are inherently unrealistic. Kind of by nature in a lot of ways. But when I require them to be, are at least what they're consistent with themselves, consistent with with the universe they're in or what they're selling. The Force works in Star Wars because Star Wars has the Force. It wouldn't work in this movie because it doesn't. You know what I mean? So rules the universe. Exactly, rules the universe. So we're in Miami. We're in a police department, and we're busting drugs. We've got these two cavalier dudes, these cops, these kind of unorthodox cops or whatever. I just don't understand people's motivation for anything they do in this movie. I don't understand why, for instance, their police captain just reams them after they destroy the city, and just a few moments later in the same scene, tells them he doesn't care what they do, just go out and get it done. Okay,
I noticed that was a weird. That's no exact, but that one was bad.
Yeah, that one was really glaring. And just why do the two guys even do what they do? I mean, why? Martin Lawrence, there's actually there's more than three. How many times is Martin Lawrence sitting in the passenger seat of a car that Will Smith is driving? He's panicking. Will Smith is kind of gangster driving this car. I mean, it happens over and over and over. And what are they doing? So Martin Lawrence is kind of a skittish cop who I would argue maybe has the only slight character arc in the entire movie, and that's that at the end he actually has the balls to shoot the dude or whatever. It's like, ooh, you kind of got. So if he's this type of guy, and then Will Smith is just this trust fund baby, this cool dude or whatever, but they're going out here and they're tearing up the city and they're risking their lives every second for all this stuff. I don't know. To me, what's the motivation there?
And I would say to that, and sorry, but my answer is very short and sweet. I would just say, and this makes me, I'll admit, this probably makes me a bad viewer, but I don't care. Okay. If I'm having fun, I really don't give a shit what their motivation is. And I will say that probably makes me a shallow and unsophisticated viewer, but I will admit that.
I just don't agree with that. But you guys, all right, so do you know?
The only reason I disagree with anything you said there is if you told me a motivation that wasn't true, which you didn't. That was a consistent statement. So I don't see.
But also think about what was their department called? Do you remember? I had to look it up just now.
TNT.
TNT. Yeah. The Tactical Narcotics Team. Yeah. It's pretty great. I mean, if you have that, it's like Mission Impossible. It's the Mission Impossible.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. The IMF is like it's a fictional, I know this is fiction as well, but the whole point, I mean, they're called the Impossible Mission. Federation? What is
Federation or Foundation, one of the two, yeah.
That's the premise. They're literally
naming it out loud.
Yeah. And maybe I should take a cue from the name of this movie, Bad Boys. I mean, they're going out and they're not good people.
Yeah.
I think these two cops only are the good guys because they set them up against KKK racist rednecks and crazy Cuban crime lords and Russian crime lords that just remember people.
Yeah.
It's like they're just going to look good by comparison.
Yeah.
But they're not good people. They're mean. They don't care about anybody else. I shouldn't say they don't care about anybody else, but they don't have regard for human life if it's not a human life that they care about.
Yeah.
Case in point, they go in and destroy an entire city just to get old boy's sister back without any regard for any civilian death or the kid, the daughter that's in that mansion that they RPG to live.
Oh yeah, they just kind of pushed her over to the side after the gunfire starts exploding through the windows. Yeah.
Another case in point there. Think about how many people would have just died a fiery, horrible death during that car chase.
Yeah.
And Will Smith at the very end of that scene, like the very last thing that happens in that scene is Will Smith just going,
I did.
just burns off. And there's all these people that are just dead and bleeding out. And it's hilarious how the movie like barely tries to cover its ass when Joe Pantoliano is like, "Wow, thank God we didn't lose any cops." It's like, right, well, at least like 15 civilians died. Did you see the scene?
And you know what, Nick? I would be just fine with that. In fact, I would laud that if by the end of the movie, Will Smith gave a shit about other humans, because then you have a character arc. But you don't have that. You have Will Smith not speaking
And that
at
totally
all.
just bought with the blink of an eye.
That's an interesting character, police, because, you know, whatever your thoughts are about the police, you know, mine are that there are some police out there that are kind of like Will Smith. I mean, there's lots of great police, but there's bad and good in every profession. But if that was their point, they're like, he's a bad cop, bad boys, bad cop, bad Will Smith, because he doesn't care about, he just cares about looking good and the glamour. And then by the end, maybe he does something altruistic. That would at least be something for me. So
Very fair point.
that is funny though that you bring that up. Just woo.
Yeah, I thought that was good. Well, and so another thing I want to just speaking of the car chase thing, and then we can leave this alone. But the cars in this movie are just really fun. As someone who like appreciates cars a little bit, I'm not like a super big car guy, but I do appreciate classic cars and muscle cars. And like that Haitian gang, that was like the boss of all boss lineups of muscle cars, like that Firebird and that absolutely sick 70s Chevelle, like that blacked out Chevelle. That's like my dream car. Like those cars, like how are these Haitian guys living in some trap house? The 72 Chevelle.
Yeah, this had to be at the time too. Just having every group had their specific set of cars, whether it was the Ferrari for Mike or if it was the Hummer. Did he get the Hummer from the Cuban? Is that where he got the bright yellow Hummer?
Yeah.
And then the Haitian guys or whoever they are with the big dreadlocks, they all had their classic muscle cars. They all had very specific cars for their groups.
They did.
It was just
Yeah. And the cars obviously were just very indicative of the personality, you know. And I have to say, I know this was just such a ridiculous part of the movie, but I don't go for every just stupid, you know, action sequence. But when Will Smith flips around the Ferrari and does like the 360, and then just unloads a submachine gun on all those guys, I'm sorry, that was just it gives me chills every time. It's just so fulfilling and great.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm sorry. I just want to comment about that scene.
I love it.
He flips the car around as he's driving, and he holds a machine gun with one hand out the window. And I'm still on the machine gun. I'm on board. But he fires upon a group of 15 to 20 armed men who are behind barricades, their cars, with machine guns. And then he stops firing, and then he just kind of casually drives away. 15 to 20 guys aiming machine guns at you at a distance where you can also fire on them. How is he alive?
Well, I think it was the sheer surprise and the shock and awe of the Ferrari coming full speed chicken at us, and he's going to flip and just spray us down with this submachine. I mean, I think those guys were, I mean, it was Mike Lowry. They were,
but if I'm holding a machine gun, I think I'm the one doing the shocking and all. Like, I don't know. Maybe, okay, there may be something to that. But just from a different level, you know, right before that, he had said, don't show him your badge, shoot him or whatever. And then that's part of the lazy writing to me is at that point, his little one-liner seemed so lazy to me. Could have been anything right there. The world was his oyster for somebody to write him. Nick, I wish you could have wrote the line he said at that moment.
There were disappointing one-liners in this movie for sure.
One of the biggest ones. You remember what he says?
Now show me your badge.
Now show me your badge.
Yeah.
What the fuck sense does that make?
Yeah, it was not a good line.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's not a good line.
2003 buddy cop movie. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, not a good line.
For a second, since we were talking about the character arcs and just the jaded, you know, aspect, I want to know what you guys thought about the tone, because that was actually something, again, being Critical Mess, we want to explore what other people thought of this movie, not just what we thought of it. And you know, one of the consistent through lines that I read in the critical reviews was that of tone. I think they really honed in on that. I'll read a couple of them here. The Chicago Reader says, this putrid action flick crawls along for 2.5 hours before expiring in a septic field of bad one-liners, half-hearted catchphrases, obliterated cars, vicious slow-mo, bullet penetration, graphic corpse mutilations played for laughs, and shamefully hollow bonding scenes between its two dyspeptic megastars. Drafted the blah, 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 struck pay dirt again with Bad Boys. This sequel, directed by right-hand man Michael Bay, is as sour and jaded as they come. So we have sour and jaded there, all right? And then there's a couple other ones here. Just Richard Roper says it was a nasty, mean-spirited movie. And I think that kind of sums it up pretty well. Just nasty and mean-spirited. Just everybody's mean. Everybody's yelling. Everybody's mad. You know, there's no nuance to the characters. Everybody's just, you know, either whether it's sassy, whether it's reprimanding, whether it's yelling, whether it's woo after you just destroy it. Like, it's all just mean-spirited to me.
Get the undertones of therapy and how to heal and all that stuff with the the video store gay scene, or the where they talk, you know, they get caught on camera and they're having this super deep moment and they're talking about their feelings and they're hashing it out on the couch. And then you have the whole scene where, I mean, the obvious part where he's talking about what was it, Goose Rabba? Whatever, where he rubs his ears and he's trying to do what his therapist told him to do to calm down. Yeah. That's right, from a different movie I'm thinking of. But it's funny that I did notice that underlying tone where it was just, there were multiple scenes. It wasn't just those two that I'm talking about, but it was like they touched on it over and over again. And they're like themes from like therapy. And like, it's the funniest thing I've ever like noticed in my life.
I think it's funny too. And and that was obviously like a Circuit City, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The TVs everywhere, yeah.
USA Today, appallingly mean-spirited with no with ha-ha bullet wounds and dismemberments. Rolling Stone, the cinematic equivalent of toxic waste. There's this sentiment of just like repulsion to this movie that a lot of the critics have. And, you know, I could read a lot more, but I'm not going to. Was it rated R? People, yeah, but I mean, there's a lot. I mean, it's not I don't think it's the content that is repulsive necessarily. I think it's the personalities of the people.
I think it was both, because they're talking about the repulsiveness of how gross and dark they went with some of the jokes. I mean, the two rats having cynics, the dismemberment of bodies, and like those people that were, who knows, they were just big fat people that they needed to stuff drugs in, because the bigger the better, they could put more drugs in them. But it was just like how the nonchalant, like there's bodies flying everywhere. I mean, maybe, yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of it. I mean, even when Marcus comes into the precinct after they go to the Cuban guy's house and they see all the blood everywhere and there's like cut up body parts everywhere. And like he goes back to the precinct and he takes that guy's cut finger and he like jiggles it in Lawrence's ear, like really quick. And he like freaks out and he's like, what the fuck? He's like the only one that like kind of seemed like squeamish by it all, but no one thought another, like,
there are plenty of movies that have even way more repulsive, grotesque stuff in them, but
it's the combo of comedy. And
but us as the audience are told by the movie that is repulsive. We're seeing it and we're told that's not good. It's not by the protagonists that we see that.
Yeah. It's us seeing it. Yeah.
That's to me what is the problem with this movie. There's no center to it.
Yeah. So I've got a serious question. There's a lot of MGD product placement in this movie. Is that still a beer you can buy?
I don't know.
I haven't seen that since like 2005.
Look at the domestic section.
Love looking at product placement in a lot of movies, but I don't think I noticed that. I don't know. Usually, like, I'll see a movie and it's a product placement that they've made up on the scene. I follow a couple props masters on TikTok, and they go through the behind the scenes of all kinds of movies. And there are set dressing pieces that are just straight fake brands that look like brands that are only for movies. And there's a beer that's specific to it. I can't remember the name of it, but that's what I assume is our.
It was real MGD. At the liquor store, I'm gonna look for MGD. That's a real serious question. I like that.
Yeah, her character drives an MGD truck. That's like her undercover truck is for MGD. And I was like, well, that's like the worst undercover truck ever, because no one drinks MGD. So it's not stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, maybe they did know 3.
Okay, so I'm gonna talk about one thing from that I really did not enjoy in this movie that perhaps also influenced the critics a little bit, because it was just rough, and that was just the whole kind of Gabrielle Union, Will Smith kind of love stuff was just cringy as fuck. I mean, it was just hard to watch. The scene where it all kind of comes to a head with Martin Lawrence sort of finding out that they're having this tryst. It's just hard to watch. It's not the acting is terrible. The chemistry between those two is terrible. They don't They don't feel like they like each other to me. It feels super fake.
Feels forced.
And I should be, you know, like, for me, like, why do I care about that? I don't. But if you're gonna have a love story, I mean, good Lord, at least put a tiny little bit of effort into it. It was just so phoned in.
Why is Marcus so pissed that she's gonna date Mike? Why is he so pissed that now he's gonna transfer? And then I followed that question with another question. Why, by the end of the movie, is he so on board with her dating him? What changed?
It was all in the same scene, wasn't it? Like on that dock, they're waiting for that boat together, and they're sitting in the hammock and they're talking. It all happened in that one moment.
Well, that's where he's like, he gets pissed
He
at
said
him.
he gets pissed. But was it in the same moment that
No,
it was later.
Go to
That's right.
Cuba and
Yeah,
have their adventure, and then at the end, just to make everything happy, he's like, okay with it.
Yeah.
What changed? Why did it go from being such a hang up that where he was going to transfer departments to now he's okay with it?
Well, he's capricious. There's no doubt.
That's a damn good answer, Nick.
Was far more in the first movie, right? Didn't he have a bunch of women around him in the first movie? Or I can't remember. I haven't seen that in a long time either.
Who? Marcus?
Yeah. No.
A lot of the first
Ladies' man.
Marcus pretending to be Mike.
I know that, but I'm saying that's what he sees him as. He's like the big ladies' man.
I agree.
That's
That's why
his
he
character.
doesn't want him to date his sister.
Yeah.
But then he's fine with it. At the end, he's on board with it and fine with it.
Practice, he realizes that's my friend. He'll do anything for me. He'll probably do anything.
How does he
for my
not
sister.
know that by then? This is
Because I was on the brink of wanting to leave him as a partner, as a friend.
Then why did he want to stay? What changed? They went to Cuba and came back. Now everything's fine. I'm sorry. man. It's
Dramatic
just-
moment in
it's-
life. I don't know.
Let's talk about Jordy Mola, aka Johnny Tapia,
AKA Jesus Christ.
a little bit. Very Jesus-y.
Well, I mean, he was painted as Jesus in his house.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Last Supper, and they explained to him that was right before he died.
Jesus.
Yeah, I guess I did.
Yeah.
And then he yells at him for painting it.
So, I think outstanding performance.
I like the guy.
I thought he played the lunatic, kind of psychopath, Cubano drug dealer to a T.
Yeah, sweat more than Martin Lawrence in that whole movie. Just the whole like the stressed out.
Yeah, he was always sweaty.
Yeah.
He was great. I bought totally in with him. What I didn't buy into was he was so incompetent, shooting at rats, letting these two exterminators into his house and he was so incompetent of a crime lord that I questioned how he even got into the position that he was in, because he did not show any like crime lord attributes. So that's my problem with the writing of the character, but the performance and the casting of the character was very good. Cuban Jesus was, he wouldn't have been the boss, but he was great.
I think I called him a Cubano, which is a sandwich. I didn't mean to insult him.
Hey,
In that way, Cuban.
we'll give our retractions at the beginning next episode, and we'll.
Fair enough. You're much more than a sandwich, there, Jordy. My favorite line of Johnny Tapia's was, I'm not going to be able to do the accent, but he goes, "I can't get my money across town without making the news." He does this news. It's kind of it's just great. I want to look. Can we go back to the Circuit City scene for a minute?
Yeah.
Because I just thought, I thought it was pretty funny. I know it was kind of in poor taste. It didn't. But my ass still hurts from what you did to it last night. And then how I get. It was the kind of the double entendres were cranked to the max.
I thought it was hilarious.
I thought it was pretty funny too. And when the woman at the end of the scene it scolds the young man working at the store for showing porno and homo shows.
Yeah.
I thought that was
She says, "Quote,
silly line.
Not like her one bit. She was a
sassy.
caricature of the large sassy black woman, and I'm like, can we have a large black woman in a scene who's not also sassy? Does that exist?
Yeah.
2003, you're gonna be hard pressed.
yeah."
And then you have the obligatory super flamboyant gay guys reacting to it. And
We all put on the ultra stereotypes of gay guys.
Well, yeah, that was pretty
that's
bad.
guys, I'm not going to read my list for time, and just because it's too pedantic, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 13 distinct caricatures in this movie, all the side characters are just complete and utter parodies or 100% to the nines caricatures of, and those are two of them. And there's just a bunch more. We talked about Ice Stick already, the Jamaican guy. And so come on, Mike. I understand it's Michael Bay, and I understand, there's not a lot of thinking going on, and you just want to be told exactly who somebody is in 2 words or less by their behavior. And so you can't have any nuance or dimensionality, but God damn, it's too much.
It's ultra stereotypical.
Again, is the epitome of Michael Bay's stereotype.
Does that one have a massive? Does Armageddon have a massive fan and critical reaction? You gotta check that out. I'd still, it's gotta be. But no, that lady at the very end of that video scene, I had to quote it. It was, "You two motherfuckers need Jesus," right before she walks out.
For the porno and line. It's ridiculous.
The one-liners are just so good. Oh my god.
No, they're not.
Ugh. Yeah, if I could say,
stereotypical characters can still have funny lines, but But I hear you, Brian. That was cringy.
Mistakenly are just absolutely.
See their conversation on the couch, and I didn't need it to be on the TVs and to hear everyone else. I just, that was a funny. I love the double entendres there. Very good.
One thing I want to give credit to this movie, and Brian, I think you'll probably even acquiesce on this one. I hope, but maybe not. But this movie, the way it nails it feels very of the time, but I want to say that it absolutely nails the 2003 Miami vibe. It feels so Miami. I don't go to Miami very often, but I just know that's exactly what to a hyperbolic degree, but I know that just feels right for 2003 Miami.
Oh, totally agree. I mean, I was a huge fan of Vice City, GTA Vice City.
Yeah.
And I put that in my synopsis before I read all the reviews. And more than one critical review said that this is basically just a long promo for Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
Nice.
So I don't know if you want to be described the movie as being a 2.5 hour long promo for a video game, but very, very I'm pretty sure they probably shot on location. I don't know that for a fact, but some of it was. It had to have been some at least, and I agree. At least it had that feel to it. It felt right. It was right on point with this is Miami Vice. And a lot of them said Miami Vice as well. So Vice City and Miami Vice.
Yep.
Guys, I want to read just a couple more of these, please. And I want to real quick. I want to shift a little bit. I mean, we can keep going on this, but I just want to make sure we hit on, or at least make sure we speak enough to why audiences and critics disagreed so much here. And I think a lot of it, again, is that audiences tend to rate something based on just their enjoyment of it, And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong at all. I think it's just good to go in to the scores knowing what they are, knowing the difference. That's all that means. But I will read you a couple of these. So this is so bad. Okay. 5 stars by Gary L. Right? And these two, this is so poetic. These 2 reviews are back to back. Gary L. 5 stars. I mean, how can you not like this movie? Name a greater action movie than this. At least 10 great scenes in this. The ratings for this film, based on critics, is exactly why you only look at audience reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, right? Okay, so take that, hold that in one hand. This guy's saying, don't even look at the critic reviews. Look at the audience reviews. You want to hear the very next rating? This is going to case in point why you don't read the fucking audience reviews, because of idiots like this. 4 stars, Chris F. Very next. Come on, this is good action film schlock. Do you guys know what schlock is? It's garbage. That's what it is. It's terrible, bad, poorly named garbage, right? So you have a guy saying, look at the audience reviews. Then you've got the next audience review saying, giving it 4 out of 5 stars and calling it garbage. Okay, come on.
Enjoyable garbage? I don't know.
Just 2 of the thousands of reviews there are. But guys, this is really rampant in the audience scores. And it really bugs me. It really bugs me that people are giving this thing just knee-jerk 4 to 5 stars because there was some hot chicks in it, or a big car chase, or a big explosion.
They had fun.
And I'm not saying that you can't rate the film 4 out of 5 stars. I'm saying if you're going to, do it for a good reason, like Nick has done. you have a lot of reasons to back up. You didn't just say it's a garbage, terrible movie. I'm giving it an 83 out of 100. You're saying it's a really enjoyable, fun, like all the reasons you love the movie. That's why you give a movie 4 out of 5 stars. If every audience member was true and faithful like that, it would be much more, interesting. But then you have critic. I mean, just another the Austin Chronicle. You leave the theater thinking less of yourself and humanity as a whole. I love that. Roger Hebert. Everybody involved in this project needs to do some community service. Oh my God, that's so good. I necessarily disagree with that. I know, right? Let's see, Slant Magazine. Michael Bay's latest jingoistic fetish film, Bad Boys 2, could be the most vile creation to come out of Hollywood since Patch Adams. I read that because that ties us to our last episode where we talked about Patch Adams being the terrible Robin Williams discrepancy. And then I'll read you one more. This is the last one I'll read. Real Views. And this one just resonates with me. Bad Boys 2 isn't just bad. It's a catastrophic violation of every aspect of cinema that I, as a film critic, hold dear. And that, if I could sum up what I dislike about that movie, it's that review. Okay, and I think some of my overall thoughts will speak to that. I think, let me ask you guys this: what's the theme of this movie? If you had to tell me what is the theme, not what's the moral or what's the plot, but what's the theme of this movie? And do you think a movie needs to have a theme?
It's something I'd want to think about a little bit, but to me, the theme is Miami drugs and cops. I mean, it's not like a like a theme, like it's got some sort of moral compass or something, or anything to say about, or anything to even say about anything. It's just kind of a the theme is just lots of action and lots of crazy shit happening, and just a feast for the eyes and ears. I guess that's not really answering your question.
What's the plot?
Yeah,
that's what happens.
Yeah, maybe I'm confused by the exact definition of what you think the theme is. Because I could name it, like something like that, or I could name some type of the tone or something. But
I think good movies have themes.
Okay,
so the theme is basically like the core of the plot, right? So you have the plot is what happens, but the theme is sort of like, what is the movie saying about what's happening, right? What's the movie? What's the point? Why does it exist as a movie?
Well, what's the theme? I guess I would maybe. It's hard. I mean, I feel like that thing is kind of easy to discern, and like more like a thriller or a big epic movie or an adventure movie. Like Hook. Plus the theme of that movie was to me it was parents.
Oh, absolutely. See, and you called it on that episode. You said you hit on a theme. You were just naturally drawn to explain what you thought the theme of that movie was. And I'm sort of asking the same question about this.
Yeah, maybe
I think you're going to struggle to find like a real concrete theme like that in a lot of movies, even the movies that are kind of objectively really good action movies. Like, what's the theme of Die
Hard? I mean, I didn't just watch it. So I'm put on.
Yeah, I know, I'm putting you on the spot here. I know, and that's a tough. And there probably is like a good answer to that, because Die Hard is a pretty thoughtfully written movie at the end of the day, and the theme probably has something to do with Bruce Willis and his wife, and now he.
I think it's a marriage theme. It's about a marriage, really.
Yeah, and kind of what you'll do to preserve your family, and kind of there's something in there for sure. Yes, and that was probably actually not a very good example to bring up.
Another theme could be like an everyday cop can be a hero kind of deal, like.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Yeah, I think you would be. Yeah, well, I don't think that was a great.
Is it tied around just a friendship? Because I keep going back to the whole therapy thing. It was legitimately a theme that went through the movie, and like it was just so under the table.
I think it's not a motif. The theme's not a motif in this respect. What I mean by theme is like what the movie is saying about what's going on.
But I think it's just those two and their relationship. These two friends that are so polar opposite, rich, not necessarily poor, but like filthy rich and maybe well off, or super over the top and extravagant, and then a family man. And then they just go through the whole film. Like they have such this difference in view in life, and they still work together every day for a single cause, which is protect and serve. You blow shit up every other weekend.
I think you're dancing around it. I think that kind of occurred to me as you were talking there. I think that to me the theme is ride together, die together.
Okay,
that is what the theme is. It's you are through thick and thin there for your partner, even when it hurts, even when it looks bad, even when we both fucked up, even, wins, losses,
See, we out there, Brian. Eat it.
Yeah, no, hey, that's the question. I genuinely
yes, just to add a little bit. But I think, but once again, the fact they even kind of had to really think that through means that the theme wasn't really all that strong. And I think back to my Die Hard point, I do think it's probably a little bit harder to dig themes out of action movies, but I do think though that a movie like Die Hard does have a pretty strong theme in a way that this movie probably does not.
even a contemporary to this would be Rush Hour. Like I said before, I think Rush Hour is an example of a buddy cop movie around the same era that even had a sequel that was good, not as good as the original. And well, and when I say a sequel's good, that I expect the sequel to be terrible. So it's better than I called it. Sure. But and I would say that the themes in Rush Hour are much more readily prevalent, and I think action movies can definitely have. So yeah, there you go. I think you're right. I think it's ride together, die together kind of deal, and I think that that's a weak theme, but it is a theme.
Yeah. I think we got there. What else, guys? I think maybe a few more things we need to iron out before we let this one go here, before we let this fish off the hook here. I think that Brian, you commented earlier that Marcus, Martin Lawrence was kind of the closest to having an arc, I guess, and it was a shallow arc, no doubt about that. But him kind of that final scene where he kills, Tapia, and kind of has the guts to do doesn't he like do a barrel roll?
Yeah.
He does the Mike Lowry, right?
It was courage finally.
Right.
At the end that he didn't show at the beginning of the movie.
Initiative that he never would have shown.
He's straight face. He looks cool and collected and everything. He looks like Mike Lowry.
Only character arc detectable in the entire film.
I would strongly agree with that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it took, and like up until 5 minutes before that, he was still,
That's okay. The arc can happen at any time for any.
It can,
as long as it's in foil. Yeah. But you're right. It was like a pivot more than an arc.
Well, I think that's a good way to put it. I think also, one other note I had in here that to just for our more careful and discerning viewers is as Tapia goes down from the gunshot to the head, he kind of his head kind of snaps back. There's kind of a booger, kind of like lodged up in part of his nose. It's very small, but you can imagine on a giant screen. I mean, that very small little booger, it's gonna stand out. It's gonna stand out like a sore
think he watches the movie and goes,
Tony Tapia doesn't really give a shit. He's boss. He's got boogers. He doesn't care. Yeah. Anyways, I thought that was, you would have thought could we have just CGI'd that booger out? Was there a bigger booger that was a larger priority?
blew their budget.
Yeah, they blew the budget on booger budget
on the
Rats, rats having sex.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say about the movie. I really wanted to just touch on those big points. So, I mean, I've got some closing thoughts, but if you guys have anything else, any other reasons,
Massive scenes that you just just stood out to you. Like I think of iconic scenes for this movie where you got Lowry with his hands straight out, right and left, because they do that pan zoom, kind of just rotate around him a couple times. Are there any scenes that you guys just know that is just iconic bad boys or from this movie that you remember?
Yeah, the scene where Martin Lawrence is on the phone and he's getting the bad news, and you got the hands.
They both slowly
stand up, and it's funny because it looks so dramatic, but he's just on a cell phone getting some news about something, and it's like, whoa, we did that, that move just for that. Okay, well, put it in the fucking trailer.
A scene that we touched on briefly earlier that I have to say is probably my favorite scene in the movie is the Reggie scene, the date scene.
Oh yes,
with Uncle Mike.
Scene of the movie.
Yeah, the motherfucker, you look 30, and they drop that line twice. It is just the way they do it. It's so good, and the way he just kind of flung that fist like chitty chitty bang bang. It's like kind of shaking her. Yeah, that's
more of that Will Smith. That's like Fresh Prince humor,
that irreverent, really cheeky,
classic Will Smith.
Bad Boys for Life, the latest one from a year or two ago.
Yeah.
You have? Okay, I have not seen it, so I'm wildly curious to see how it compares to this.
I mean, I think I saw it right when it came out, so it's not super fresh in my mind. But for me, it was better than I thought it was going to be. It was not a dumpster fire, but it wasn't great. It was more of the same. The chemistry was he was
still
good.
there. Okay.
He once again carried the
It's like we talked about, like Lawrence has not been on the scene in years. I don't know where he's been or what he's been doing. I'm sure he's been in some things, but that's wild that he just popped up, almost 20 years later to do another Bad Boys.
I'm sure the money was right.
I don't doubt. I'm sure Will Smith was the big draw, and so yeah.
Guys, how come the first time Marcus's pool collapses, he's completely livid, and then the second time the exact same thing happens, he's like goofy fun,
He didn't go for it the second time.
It's still his pool. He still loves it.
Yeah, that's true.
Why is he so happy?
Because he knows.
It's because Michael Bay, end of movie, audience happy, everything fine, make him laugh this time. It's like, oh my God, really?
I have Mike Lowry's description of the pool, and he's just like, it's like a puddle in plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
He got gypped, by the way, $3,900 for that pool.
No kidding. Jeez. Miami prices. Yeah, guys. I think we've gone through quite a bit here. I've got one little comment just regarding the very end of the film that is something I really like that movies do. That I feel like movies don't do this very often anymore, and it was kind of more of a kind of an 80s 90s thing, and that's kind of keeping the movie rolling during the credits. And sometimes it's outtakes, sometimes it's like actually another scene in the movie. But I just think that's that's the kind of thing that an audience favorite movie does. I feel like, and this movie knew that and did it. And it's not like some great scene and it's not outtakes. It's like another scene in this movie, and it's not like super memorable or anything. But it's just kind of a nice extra little thing that just kind of further solidifies the bond between those two. Those two characters. So I think that's just a nice touch in movies that I hardly ever see anymore.
Yeah, it's usually very, very end of all the credits, or
It's usually in comedy.
something else. Yeah, or it's the montage at the end of a comedy. Yeah.
Outtakes or whatever, bloopers.
Well, do you guys want to just final thoughts?
I'll give you my final thoughts. Just to kind of recap, I thought overall it felt like a very one-dimensional film. There's no nuance or subtlety to anything or anyone. It felt like a parody. It was very erratic. The first 15 minutes of the movie, I can't tell you how many establishing location shots with some kind of hip-hop or cool electronic music playing. The camera's never stationary. It's just very ADHD erratic. It's just like I'm just exhausted, after 2.5 hours of it. Racist and sexist. Everyone's either a black bitch or a honky or a dumb Latin fuck, and those are direct quotes taken from the movie that are said multiple times by people of whatever ethnic group talking about the other ethnic group. Nobody's ever just a person. They're always a whatever kind of skin color they are. All the chicks are dumb bitches, bimbos, or sluts. Like it's like, oh my God, like what is this?
If you said the description, I would have said, "Is this a Michael Bay movie?"
Yeah, there you go.
So, yeah.
There's no setups or payoffs. We didn't really touch on that, but I love a good setup and a good payoff, and we didn't get much of that. Minimal character arcs. We talked about that. Very lazy writing, lack of a theme. So I guess we did discover a theme there. But definitely not a moral to the story. And I think the only reason this exists is to make money. I think this was a cash grab, and that's why it was made, and it worked. And then the tone, it was just angry, mean, nasty. I didn't feel good at the end of it. And it's not because of what happened, but it was because of how approving all the characters, even the protagonists in the story, were about what was happening. And they were the perpetrators of a lot of it. So I guess some of why I gave it a 1 out of 5. That's those reasons. I'm not going to he's holding guns wrong, whatever, so that's it for me.
Yeah, I think I'll let Nick go last since he enjoyed it the most. But overall, I really expected a lot more. Number of years coming back later, I expected nostalgia to ride me home on this one and give me a 7, maybe an 8 out of 10. But a 5.5 is a pretty low score for me. Typically, a movie with a pulse will give me a 3 or 4. So that's real low for me. I think I enjoy a lot of these movies in general, but this one just felt, I think, totally just completely off. Like I was expecting to have a lot of fun, and I think I just was cringed at a lot of stuff. Like you said, the racist comments, the weird character acting, and then it was just the overall tone, just like the ups and downs of super comedy, and then there's some really dark, disgusting humor in here, and you're just looking at these characters not react in any way, shape, or form around it. And it took me out of it a few times, but overall, it's just a very over the top, outrageous film. One that kind of I think about a little bit, but it's more recent, is Pain and Gain with The Rock. And have you seen that one, or do you guys? it's like a true story, and it tells you over and over again, this is a true story. This all really happened. That's what it felt like. It was just everything got crazier and crazier and crazier and just escalated, and it just never got anywhere. Is what I was expecting it to be or what it used to be. I don't know.
As the action increases, the stakes never do.
Yeah, exactly. So I was kind of underwhelmed and a little sad that it didn't give me a little bit more boost in the nostalgia department.
So I will preface this by saying I agree with a lot what you both of you guys just said there, and I will freely admit that. But for me, I mean, this is a movie I've got the nostalgia glasses on for, and Bad Boys 1 in particular was like is transparently one of my favorite movies of all time. So that is definitely plays into this too. I can see this movie as a deeply flawed movie in many ways that I still really enjoy a lot. And for me, and really the comedy and the chemistry between the two main characters that really make this movie for me and make it still an enjoyable, fun watch to this day. The action to me is pretty meh. It's ridiculous. It's way over the top, but it's not me 15 years ago appreciated it a lot more than now. And I guess I would say in a lot of ways, I mean, it does make me feel a little gross that I do like this movie itself, because I do, and I'll say that unashamedly, but it does make me feel a little gross in some ways. And I will also admit that I think the older I get, the less I like it, but that doesn't change the fact that I still do enjoy this movie. And I guess I would also say that we've said a lot of times, tonight, that the movie is very of its time. And to me, that's okay. And some movies are going to feel like that, and some movies are not. And this one really, really does. And I think it'll just get worse and worse over the years. This movie is going to feel like 2003. So exactly of that year, 50 years from now, and so I think that, that once again, it's just, I can accept that. I can accept that, even though it's maybe not a good thing. It's something that it just kind of is what it is. So this has been, I think, a really good discussion, guys. As usual, pretty good second. Well, as usual, it's our second track at it, but I think this has been fun.
I like that we really had strong opinions. We're able to sort of put them out there and like detach ourselves from them. Here's the opinion, and we just talk about it because I think there's going to be a lot of that, and I'd love it.
Yeah,
you guys obviously I respect both of you guys' opinions on movies a lot. And it's interesting to respect someone's opinions and disagree with them, because both can happen at the same time. Because you can see, it's like, I can see why you think that, and or how that's accurate and stuff.
Yeah.
So
having just talked about Hook, I can't believe how polarizing and just detracted we were from this movie compared to the last one.
Yeah, it was kind of nice.
Yeah, I enjoyed the debate for sure.
Thank you, everybody. This has been a second episode of Critical Mess. We had a lot of fun. We hope you did too. If you're still listening, we very much appreciate you, and we appreciate you anyways. So please tune in next time, where we're going to talk about, who knows what the hell we're going to talk about. We're going to figure that out here soon, but it's going to be something divisive, and we're going to have some fun with it. So we will see you guys next time.
See you.
Hold it.